No,
In
I don't
isolation,
understand,
it
Yashwant
cannot be
Deshmukh.
that
In your
everyone will have
poll,
to sacrifice
when
to
you're
make it
asking who
10 by 100.
benefits, I would have thought the number of people who thought the NDA and the BJP are benefiting would be much higher. That's only 20%. 45% of the respondents seem to think all parties benefit. How do all parties benefit with this? What's your reading of that data set?
Well, Rahul, the split vote is in and settled. And in our latest MOT and going by the data, I did dissect the data and figured out there is almost like 30% of Indians who are kind of in a swing zone, kind of a mood when they have to do the voting on the same day. So I am very clear, Rahul, that if the elections, one nation, one election happens as on today, then we are likely to get a central government which is BJP led, but in majority of the states, the opposition chief ministers would be installed on the same day. So I have no doubt in that people can very well handle the one way one election, and people are going to give different kind of verdicts for different layers of the governance. It is not going to benefit politically to any one party, as one way say so. Of course, opposition parties say that BJP is trying to do it because they try to use the popularity of the Prime Minister even to the winning Vidhan Sabha election. That doesn't happen. We have seen BJP lost majority of the Vidhan Sabha elections, even though the Prime Minister has gone and campaigned. People vote for Modi's popularity when the Modi's elections come. They are not going to vote for Modi when the assembly elections come in that way. And that is by and large, my argument for getting over that fear of, of the politics behind one nation. It's a good idea. People understand that it is a good idea. It should implement. However, personally speaking, Rahul, I have one reservation against this idea. That is, in this country where majority of the elected representative, once then they get elected, for the next 5 years, they take the public for granted. If everybody gets voted and elected on the same day for the 5 years, there is no opportunity for the public to give to add their sentiment in any way, because we are an incomplete democracy of sorts in absence of referendum, the constitutionality of referendums and the right to recall within the constitutional rights. So unless these kind of reforms are in, unless the governments are forced to ask the people before taking important idea. For example, Uniform Civil Code. It is so easy for any government or central or the state to pass on a law, but actually, do they go back and ask the people, should we implement Uniform Civil Code? That sort of big decision. So if you look into all developed and established democracies, India happens to be the only democracy which doesn't give a chance for the people to give their opinion in the referendums, doesn't ask the government to go back to the people and ask them before taking an important decision, and doesn't give a constitutional right to recall. So unless these two things are given to public of India, I think one nation, one election might end up in having a 5-year, one election, okay, fine. But the next 5 years, everybody, all those who are elected just working on their own way and not going to and asking the public or asking the people,
Now, that's the response, Syed Zafar Islam. While it can be argued that too many elections, disrupt the focus on governance, but at least they put pressure from the public on the government, because you're constantly having to seek validation. Without that, Raja ki marji, you're elected for 5 years, do whatever you want, because you need to go back only 5 years later to seek validation. Here, if you get it wrong, Karnataka tells you got it wrong. Later, you have to go back in Madhya Pradesh, Rajasthan, Chhattisgarh, Telangana, Mizoram. You have to get voters to vote for you. So you're constantly under stress. You're constantly under pressure. You're constantly having to make policies which keep public on your side. Otherwise, if you get elected big in 2024, as an example, if we already had one nation, one election, then you could do pretty much whatever you want for the next 5 years. This ensures that there is some counterbalance and some pressure.
Well, two things, Rahul. First thing, that we are a responsible party, we are a responsible government, irrespective whether the tenure is 5 years or 50 years. We will always serve the people and safeguard the interests of our nation. So, away from that, yes, it has both advantages and disadvantages when it comes to seeing from the perspective of a common man on the street. It will work for them, it may not work for them. So it has both pros and cons. So one has to really evaluate, and there must be some method to madness to ensure that the common man's interest is never ever compromise. So the political party will have to become responsible. Political party will have to think in terms of serving the people, serving the nation, not serving the family. Or that's why we are anti Parivarvad, we are anti-corruption, we are anti-Tuštikaran, means policy of appeasement.
Let me take you through some of the other responses. Will voter participation increase as a result of one nation, one election? 51% of the respondents say it will increase a lot. 20% say it will increase somewhat. No impact, say 22%. Mahima Singh from the Congress, you've got 71% of the respondents thinking that voter participation will increase either a lot or to some extent. That's a big reason why you should just do it in one go. So people just go out. They don't necessarily always vote for the same party. We've seen in Orissa, we've seen in states like Andhra Pradesh also to some extent, people have voted differently. They don't always vote the same way.
While you refer to your poll, Rahul, I am also reminded of the IDFC Institute's study that found out that if one nation, one poll was conducted, then more than 77% of the voters would prefer to vote for one party. That is a study that has been held and found out. I align with the very pragmatic contention that Rajdeep made early on when you started discussing this point about one nation, one election. That, while people, it may look like a very palatable, very popular idea, it is a populist idea at best, defined at its best, it's a populist idea. But it's I would say, consequences need to be understood. And I think we've been discussing those consequences very elaborately already. When I think of one nation, one election and how the BJP is trying to bring it about, I think that the BJP is pleading euthanasia. Why I say that is because it is constitutionally, morally, ethically, politically repugnant as an idea. In a geographically diverse country as India, which has geographical disparities, we are a very expansive federal structure. The mother of the democracy, at this point in time when we are growing economically as we see, as it had to be, and as the BJP contends all the time, I think we should have been expanding, we should have been elaborating ourselves on the human rights spectrum. Whereas
not really.
It's not
nothing to do with human rights. If you can reduce the number of election cycles, if you can reduce the number of election cycles instead of having one election every few months, if you find like a midway house, which is okay, one election in the year, so you bunch all the elections that happened that year, or you have midterms like primaries, right? So you have midterms every 2.5 years. There are ways in which this can be done. It doesn't need to be done as an extreme. There are ways in which can be done which makes it eminently sensible. S.Y. Qureshi, do you agree? Okay, maybe one nation, one election is thrust down people's throat. That may see a pushback from the opposition. But can a halfway house be found where you do, say, at least all elections at the same time in the year, or every 2 years you do elections? There are different things which can be done to make this a more practical idea, S.Y. Qureshi. I'm coming back to you, Mahima Singh, in just a moment. S.Y. Qureshi.
Yeah, well, first of all, the IDFC study which was mentioned is very, very important because it was a study spread over 15 years, 1999 to 2014. And it studied the voting behavior of 513 million people. And it found that when the election was simultaneous, 77% people voted for the same party. And when the same election got 5 or 6 months apart, it fell down to 61%. And when it is the gap is even more, you have seen the results in Delhi. In one election, the entire Delhi went for one party. 9-8 months later, for parliament, it went to another party. And so that is not something to be taken lightly. And the other thing, my feeling is that, one nation, when the moment you bring in the one nation, people's nationalism and patriotism comes to the fore. But if you take the same logic, why not one nation, one political party? One nation, one leader. Why do we need all the chief ministers doing all kinds of things? So can you take it to that logical conclusion? So I think it is therefore a dangerous idea. And the Law Commission, don't forget the Law Commission appointed by this government in 2018 itself flagged the issues, the constitutional amendments which will be required. It also referred to the basic structure of the Constitution, Just read that report, and instead of dismissing it. And secondly, whatever this study may have said, but I remember one BJD MP saying that what do people want? People actually love frequent elections because that is the only power of vote is the only power they have, which otherwise what happens for 5 years, MLA MP doesn't come back to them. And how many times we have seen posters, Gumshuda ki talash, wanted, MLA missing, MP missing. This is what will happen
Okay.
because he is assured of 5 years term and they will never go back. Therefore, the accountability, the way the
Just come in,
issues
please.
will get mixed up.